off tonight's episode of the new NASCAR Canada Power Hour here on G-Force TV with some solemn hearts as we say goodbye to one of Canada's greatest contributors to motorsports. This graphic borrowed from Mike Rice on Facebook. Norris MacDonald passed away today, and for anybody that is a motorsports fan in Canada, you would definitely be aware of Norris MacDonald. I myself remember waiting for the Toronto Star. We would get it on the weekends, and always excited because the wheels section would always be for me, because it would have an article that Norris MacDonald would write about NASCAR in. First time I really got to know a media member in terms of motorsports in Canada, and Norris provided weekly information and opinions and takes that I take and took so seriously as a young race fan. Unfortunately, we can't always have our favorites around forever, and Norris was one of the ones that is most beloved. We will miss Norris and all he provided for our racing fans in Canada, and we aim to do more to honor his legacy as we continue in motorsports in Canada. Hello everybody, I am your host for the evening for the NASCAR Canada Series Power Hour. Cam K back with you. And a really tough situation. Norris, there's not a lot of media names that I know, that I knew at least back in when I was first becoming a fan of motorsports. But Norris MacDonald was one of those names. But we didn't get opportunities to check your phone and see what was happening. I didn't even have the access to the internet on a regular basis as a kid. We were only allowed a certain amount of it, and so what we looked forward to was the newspaper. And I know it seems kind of crazy when you think about how accessible print, or media is nowadays. There's videos, there's pictures, there's websites, social media. We didn't have a lot of that way back when I started watching NASCAR in 2002, and Norris was the guy that got us informed of some of the amazing stuff taking place in motorsports in Canada. And he was never shy on his opinion, and I liked that. There was times I didn't like it, but that is what made him so good. And it is so tough that there are people that involved in motorsports that I would have loved to talk with. Norris MacDonald would definitely be one of them. We met a couple of the people that growing up meant so much to me because they either introduced me to racing, or I really think that Norris was the good start for my love of motorsports and wanting to do what he did. Got to be lucky enough to chat with Alan Bestwick, chat with Joe Chisholm. These are guys that, I grew up respecting and knowing because of Race Time Radio, and then because of Alan Bestwick's calls on NBC. That's what led to my passion for wanting to be a host, wanting to do play-by-play, wanting to talk motorsports, was Alan Bestwick. But in terms of weekly shows, you have Joe Chisholm, you have Norris MacDonald, who wrote about it. And unfortunately, people cannot stay with us forever, but they leave a huge legacy, and we can only hope to honor that. So it is tough. Might as well start the complaining right away, as everybody was surprised no Granby. Jim, we'll get started. I mean, I'm going to go off right now and say the amount of disrespect out there is kind of crazy. With every sport, change happens every year, but you're not privy to those conversations. You don't know what happened behind the scenes. We know there's a lot of talk. There's just so much talk, rumors, gossip. Sure, there is. That's part of motorsports. It seems like, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I like every decision, that I like every call, because I'm a race fan first. So right now, obviously, as a personal side of things, I would love maybe some of the changes, parts of the schedule that were not made are great, but some of the ones that were made, I don't like. But again, I'm not in those meetings. I don't know what's happening, if it was the track decision, if it was the series decision. At the end of the day, they made their decisions. It's done. You don't have any way of changing it. I've seen people say you have to let's start a protest. Let's start this. No. You can be upset all you want. You're allowed to be upset. You are a race fan. But getting on this, and this is where it really irritates me, is that on both sides there's irritation. I'm going to say why. Okay? You have fans on the Ontario side complaining that it's a Quebec series now. And then you have Quebec fans saying, well, if you didn't have us, you wouldn't have a series. Can we just shut up, please? Because there's a reason that we went to Quebec. There's a reason why we didn't go to Ontario. There's a reason why decisions are made. Now, people can say what they want. This is not NASCAR. It hasn't been NASCAR since 2006. So we have to start there. Okay? Now, are people allowed to love and reminisce about NASCAR? Absolutely. But when we look at it as, oh, this is NASCAR, well, no, it's not. It's not. And it's not going to be, because it's under the NASCAR umbrella. It's under the NASCAR name. They will make this NASCAR Canada series. It's not going back to the old way of things. They want a national championship. And in a national championship, you cannot have most of your races in one province or two provinces. You have to spread the wealth. Now, ethically, or we'll start with cost-wise. Do I think that the schedule is going to be great? It is going to be very tough for race teams this year, based on the scheduling. It is very difficult to travel. It is very difficult to book hotels. Very difficult to book flights without money. Let's be honest. That is the toughest side of this. Give Alain Labrosse some time. I heard the new guy, not good with names, but seems very energetic and lots of enthusiasm. Hope he can make things happen. Alain Labrosse was interviewed by Race Rivals Race Chat last week, Clinton Jeffrey and Adam Ross, and I thought he was trying so hard to be respectful to the English-speaking crowd. He needs to be given a chance. And the amount of comments of people complaining that it's A, a Quebec GM, and B, that the finale is in Montmagny. Let's understand something, okay? The Quebec fan base has treated the NASCAR Canada Series in its history as if it was a Cup Series. And while you say, well, Ontario doesn't treat it like that, because they treat the series like a big freaking deal that they shut down their downtown for GP3R. You don't see that in Ontario. Toronto happens, we are kind of the throwaway event, and let's be honest, making a free Friday for fans, this is considered a throwaway event. It's not a headliner. It's underneath even Indy NXT now, because it's not on the paid day. Out west and out in the Maritimes, I think you're going to see that continuation, that they put a big effort on these series coming here. Well, if you want races out west and you want races out in the Maritimes, you have to limit how many races that you have in Ontario. And people are talking like this is going to be the biggest Quebec series ever. Have people not been watching the series the last 5 years, 6 years? It has been a mostly Quebec-filled series. From partnerships to new race teams to drivers. They are coming in and they are supporting. Where Alain Labrosse's biggest work is going to be is helping the Ontario side with partnerships. And they specifically spoke to that in the interview last week. They talked specifically about Larry Jackson. And Alain's position, he cannot be focused on one group. And there's this belief that he's only going to help Quebec racers. He is the GM of the entirety of NASCAR Canada. Now flip that around. When Tony Spiteri was in that position, were people thinking like that? No. So show some respect. It is part of sports. They change every year. Something happens that gets everybody upset. You have to go where there's money, where there's support, and people have been pushing. Howard Renomano has been pushing for Montmagny to be on the schedule for the NASCAR Pinty Series, now the NASCAR Canada Series, for years. Years. Now, there are omissions this year. Sunset Speedway is not on the schedule. Neither is a second Ohsweken race and Toronto. Now, we already know logistically Toronto probably wasn't going to work. Sure, they could have moved their race dates. They could have moved the Western Swing. Absolutely. Do I think it would be a lot more easier to just say, we'll curb it for a year and we'll come back next year? Absolutely. There's no fall brawl. Okay, well, that's fine. What's to say that they don't fix that in the future? Okay, it happens. Decisions are made. Now, this gives APC a situation where they can be the headliner. Make it a big fall brawl weekend without the Pinty Series, without the NASCAR Canada Series. There's an opportunity here. Make it, again, about the Ontario racing at Delaware Speedway for the finales. Utilize and this is what Delaware Speedway, I think, should be doing. Make all your championships fall on the fall brawl night or that whole weekend. Have your Oscars like you were going to have, your APC, your Quick Wicks, but also have your V8 championship, have your Bone Stock championship, have your late models and your super stocks. Have it all fall on that same weekend. Sure, You might not want to have the super stocks competing at the same time. You might not want to have this competing or that competing. Just have it all. Have it all. Why can't you have two late model races that weekend? Might be a little bit more hard for the late model teams, I understand. Bring in your touring divisions. I mean, right now, OSS has already announced their schedule, so they won't be there for the finale. That's not going to happen. But make it a big show. Make it where you can get if you can get whoever you can to show up and race, do it. Try and make that APC event 30 cars again. That's what people want to see. And now all of a sudden, you make that race 200 laps and it doesn't have any competition the next day. Now, I think that there is worry that people, maybe won't show up as much. The APC crowd did not falter. We didn't have any issues with the APC crowd. In fact, lots of people said the APC crowd was better than the NASCAR crowd the following day. So, I understand. I totally understand people's frustrations. However, completely crapping on the series as soon as they release something, what is that accomplishing? It's just people spewing hot air. That's all it is. That's really what it is. Because people, if you're starting to state it is, it's the Quebec's fault. No, it's not. They're the ones that are helping save the series. Oh, it's not Ontario's fault. And I saw a couple comments as well about that where stating, it's pitiful in Ontario, the amount of people that show up, and if you didn't have Quebec, your series... Well, hold on a second. If you didn't have the Ontario side of things, you wouldn't have a series either, because you wouldn't have cars, because a majority of the cars are coming from Dave White or McCall Racing Enterprises. So, first off, you got the chassis. Those are coming from Ontario. And then you've got the teams, which I think it's about 75% of them are all based in Ontario. So hold off. First off, you've got officials that are majority based in Ontario. So both of you need each other. Can we stop this back and forth where Ontario doesn't need this and Quebec doesn't need this? How about you guys need each other and just leave it at that? Simple. Done. Let's take a look at the schedule. All right, so here's a couple of things. Do I like CTMP opening the season? I actually don't, personally. I love having an oval race to start the season. However, what's really good about this is we typically get really good numbers. When it comes to the NASCAR Pinty Series, when it comes to NASCAR Canada Series, we get really good numbers. For the races at CTMP. They typically bring in a good amount of competitors, and the last couple of years, the crowds have been phenomenal, which is exactly what you want. Absolutely what you want. Now, would Sunset Speedway have had that same amount of people? They don't have enough space to fit as many people as you can get at CTMP. Absolutely, there is opportunities to race at Sunset Speedway if they don't want to race this season, or they can't race this season, or if Sunset is pulling the plug themselves. We don't actually know, and that's before people just jump to conclusions. We don't actually know what the situation is. I can't imagine that they would just pull the plug. There must be a reason. And you have to remember, tracks have to pay for NASCAR to come there, so it has to make sense for them financially. Now, we already know Sunset Speedway has put in a ton into their program this last couple of years. They have done an amazing job at lots of new initiative, lots of exciting race events. So I think they're just going to continue that in 2024. So yes, while it is a disappointment, and for me, as my home track, it is quite sad not to see the series there. I do know that there was obviously a decision that was made for one reason or not. Now, Chaudière still being early in the season, love that. The track is amazing. It's a beautiful, beautiful racetrack. Eastbound Park is back. Now, key with Eastbound Park, this is the final of the 3-season deal that they had signed. So, 3 seasons. This is going to be the really big test for Eastbound Park to see whether or not their crowds are well enough and if it's a good enough decision to continue to go back there. When they re-sign tracks for deals, this is going to be very interesting to see what that does. The key highlight for me is these 2 races back to back at Riverside Speedway. Oh man. Now, do I think that there is going to be 2 split races? I would have to say yes. I can't see them going 600 laps or even 400 laps in 2 days at Riverside Speedway. I don't really want this to be the case because I like the 300 lappers, but if it's taking the Sutherland approach, then what we're going to see is maybe a 125 or a 150 on the Saturday, and then the following day a 125 or a 150. It really depends on what they want to decide. Is it 250 total or 300 total? Riverside is by far the most requested track for us to return to. There's not a lot of places anymore, even across Canada, that the series can race at. There's a lot of things that are on their schedule, that are on their requirement list, that tracks just they cannot accommodate. Not to mention the cost. For those that ask about Peterborough, that asked about Sauble, that have asked about, I guess that's pretty much it in Ontario. There's restrictions that NASCAR has. They have their own rules, and also they have their own costs. If the track can't afford it, they can't afford it. Ohsweken Speedway moves, as we already kind of knew this one, but moves to July. And it's moving to a Thursday. Now, again, I see people complaining that, okay, why you guys split up the dirt week? Well, again, decisions are made on with other people at the table, not just NASCAR. The tracks are involved. Now, I don't know Clinton's side of it. I don't know Glenn's side of it. This seems like it's experimental. Like they wanted to try something else. Whether NASCAR wants to or Ohsweken wants to, I'm okay with it. I really do. I like it being on a Thursday rather than a Monday or Tuesday. The July, I'm really curious, and I don't know dirt racing well enough to be speaking on this, so I don't know how the track would actually do in July as compared to August, but I am very interested. This is where the interest comes from for me, is because it has never been done before in our series. So I'd be very curious to see what comes out of that. Now, the other side of this is there more of a benefit to having it on the Thursday prior to the Friday night action that takes place at Ohsweken Speedway? I think yes. I think that is a good combination. Thursday, Friday, it might be a lot easier for those at Ohsweken Speedway who are putting on the races to handle. Something that wasn't really talked about so much was this move. 2 weekends out west. Let's get that on the camera. 2. Not 1 week split amongst a couple of days. Yes, Tim, we haven't even gotten to the if NASCAR Canada Series is rained out. I don't even want to think about it. But it's the same thing also. I thought about that for Riverside. What happens if you've got the rain on the Saturday? It works perfectly because then you just do a 300 lapper the next day. Whether they decide to do that, I don't think so. I think they would probably just split it and do 2. but very questionable if it rains. But what happens if it? But it's the same, I guess, Tim, as like what happens if it rains on the Thursday and then it rains on the Friday as well? Do you just keep delaying it? I don't know. And you'd have to remind me, Tim, but I think there's only been a couple of cases where it was rained out, not Oshweekend, but just in general, a NASCAR Canada race was rained out a couple of times, and they had to postpone the race to a later date. I don't know if they would do that with Oshweekend. I would imagine they'd have to do that with Oshweekend. So 2 weekends for our Western swing. We're going to Sutherland first this time. And we're going for one night with one race. So the big question mark to me is this going to be a 250? I would imagine it is. We've seen 125 or 150 races the last couple of years. I like this. I think splitting races out at Sutherland actually may have hurt it a little bit. I think the action was always phenomenal. And I'm very interested at Sutherland on what the schedule in terms of how many laps we're going to see and how people do. They're going to be used to doing 2 races a day. And now all of a sudden they're going to do just the one. But then they've got to wait an entire week and go further west to Edmonton International Raceway. Wetaskiwin always does an amazing job with this series. But the stretch is very tough here because when they get back from the Saturday, they've got to wait till the following, 2 Sundays for the Grand Prix de Trois-Rivières. The stretch gets very difficult in August because you've got the GP3R, the biggest event of the season, and then you've got Delaware on August 17th, just a week later. Well, 6 days later. Moving to a Saturday, and most likely it's going to be a Saturday night. Love it. I hope to be able to make Delaware this year. ICAR, people know my feelings on ICAR. I don't really have much love for the racing. I don't have much for the track. It's just a personal opinion. I've just never really liked the racing there. There was a couple of years where it was good, but recently it was better last year, which is good and a positive sign. CTMP, once again, back for its September 1st weekend, and then Montmagny for September 22nd. Now, unfortunately, because I'm involved in a lot of different motorsports, I won't be able to make the finale, unfortunately. It is the same weekend as the finale for a series I work in, and I'm not going to be able to do the travel for that, which is okay. I mean, it's one of those places that you want to check out first, see how things go. Obviously, I'm not really in for a lot of travel. I'm not a huge fan of it myself, which is funny because I support this series. But if there was a place that I'm going to go travel, it would be to Riverside. They've been waiting since 2019 to get the series back, so I'm really hoping that we get a great turnout of cars and a great turnout of fans. We really, really need that for those races out at Riverside. Tim says, kind of bummed Delhi same weekend as Michigan. Yes, I was going to touch on this because, again, I've seen some talk about how this, brain dead decision. It is what it is. If you can't get another date for Delaware, you take what you can get. Would you rather it dropped off the schedule completely? Right? And yeah, Tim, I think it's going to hurt the crowd because there's so many race fans that go to Michigan because it's one of the closest NASCAR Cup races, NASCAR Cup weekends that Canadian fans can go to. So I do think it's going to hurt the crowd, unfortunately. It's not going to be the crowd that you see at Full Brawl. I think the majority of people that show up at that race is because they're already there. It's the biggest weekend that they could have had. Tons of racing, tons of support, and unfortunately, the decisions are made. Whether or not people are going to agree with it, that's up to them. But I do think that this might be a temporary thing. Not for the finale, but the time frame. Now, I don't know what people would think about this, but why not start the season at Delaware? It doesn't have the same hype, I understand, but before everything else gets going, start at the home for this series. Show the respect that this track deserves. I would do it myself with the OSS next year. I would do it where you have the OSS on the Friday night and have, because OSS starts their racing the same weekend, at least this year, as CTMP. But next year, why don't you try and plan the week before, have a stock car race for the OSS, which is likely to get Pinty's drivers or NASCAR Canada drivers to try and enter in that, which is, again, great for everybody. And then the next night have the NASCAR Canada series with their opener. I think if you open the season it's just my opinion. Like, I don't particularly like opening the season on a road course. That is a preference. Tim brings up a great point, though, that there is still a good option here, because July 12th, the OSS is at Delaware. So, combo trip, Ohsweken Speedway on the Thursday, OSS at Delaware on Friday. Nice short trip. Again, the other side of it is if they don't want to see the OSS at Delaware, they could stay and watch the weekly racing at Ohsweken Speedway on the Friday. So, obviously there's some omissions. We talked about Sunset earlier. Granby. Not really a ton of press around Granby at all. I know last year they were thought to be confirmed. They had media members within Quebec that printed and posted and wrote that it was done, it was signed, it was sealed, it was going to be delivered, and then they weren't on the schedule. So Granby doesn't get on the schedule. I kind of feel if you're going to have a dirt race, it's either one or the other. And I'm only speaking from myself that I'm here to watch the asphalt racing. I'm not really here to watch the dirt racing. We've kind of seen it with the Cup Series that they've dropped it from their schedule. The Truck Series dropped it. So I imagine that likely, unless Ohsweken, again, continues to be a big hit, and they want to continue to give back to Glenn because Glenn has done a lot, I don't know. I got a lot of mixed reports last year for how the crowd was and how the reception was. I still like having it being maybe our thing. Not everybody's going to do it. We know ARCA does it. They go to DuQuoin. They go to... I can't remember the other track that they go to. But they go to DuQuoin. State Fairgrounds or something? That's the other one. So they go dirt racing. Whether or not we go or not, I mean, it remains to be seen. And this is where kind of I think about that Ohsweken date. It's July 11th, which if Springfield, thank you, Jim. If the three, so this is again the final year for Ohsweken Speedway's three season deal with the NASCAR Canada Series. They've now moved to July 11th, so like second week in July. Was this done so that it's an easy transition if they're not back next year. You put Toronto back on the schedule in the second week of July, where Ohsweken is right now, and then Ohsweken gets dropped because they don't want to return for that another year. I can see that. I don't know, though. I have not been to Ohsweken for a NASCAR Canada Series event, and I heard various rumblings from like the crowd being amazing to it not being very amazing to most people were kind of there for the other racing, not so much the Canada Series. And I think it depends really on the field, too. If you get those names like Stuart Friesen, Ken Schrader, do people want to continue to see Ken Schrader and Stuart Friesen for these races, or would they like to see some new faces? Obviously, with Christopher Bell originally pitched, our whole initial season was going to be so big and so grand for Ohsweken, and unfortunately, it got delayed, and then the Cup Series did it before us. So we had it first, and unfortunately everybody else got to doing it before us because of everything that happened with COVID. Tim, I'm trying to, I don't know. Come on, call it Pinties. I dislike that series changing their name and rename all the old races accordingly. It's going to slip out, dude. I'm going to call it the Pinty Series regardless, even if I continue to try. But I to me, if I'm going to look at this from a complete standpoint of a national championship, how is this schedule? This schedule is amazing. From the side of a national championship, if you are considering from Alberta all the way to Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, this is a great schedule. The reality is we don't have a ton of tracks to choose from anymore. Do we end up going out to BC at some point in the future? I don't know. I don't know. From what I've heard, the infrastructure is there to make Area 27 be usable for the NASCAR Canadian Series, NASCAR Canada Series. However, I just don't know if they would do that. We know Sun Valley, formerly known, Sun Valley Speedway, is not reusable. It hasn't been demolished as far as I understand, but it's been closed for years. And the other racetrack, Penticton Speedway, as far as I know, is not there. There's no interest as far as I'm concerned. As far as I'm known, sorry, not my concern. As far as I know, there's no interest there. They've got RS1, right? So they're kind of more impartial to them. So whether or not we end up going to other racetracks in the future, there's not a lot to choose from anymore, unfortunately. Montmagny is really one of the last ones that I think could be introduced to the schedule. As sad as it is to say, there really isn't. We don't have new tracks popping up every week. We don't have facilities that are thriving, really. The only major change that I could see coming to this series in the future is the big one being Montreal. And that really depends on what happens in the next year. If Montreal does get a cup race, absolutely I would think that the Canadian Series would be there. The NASCAR Canada Series would definitely be there. Whether or not it is going to be a big difference, hard to say. I'd love it if we could go there and we get 30 entries again. It's not out of the realm of possibility. We've seen about 30 entries at times for the CTMP races. Should be very interesting to see what we get this year. A couple of names that I know that are coming back. A couple names that are, we don't know. I've heard some rumblings on some full-timers or full-time series. What about Brighton, Brockville, or Cornwall, says Scored Mead. I don't think the series is looking to go anywhere in the dirt side of things. I think they've got the two places that they would go to, which is Ohsweken and Granby. And I don't know if they're going to go again. I don't know. I hope that there is a continuation just so it's unique. And it is something that our series can do, but I really don't see them. I don't see it because it's already difficult on the teams right now having to prepare a dirt car, a road course car, and an oval car. It's been quite difficult, and teams have communicated to me that is a challenge. So we definitely would have to consider that when making the plans for a 2025 schedule. It's not the only thing that took place, obviously. The logo has gone through a steady change, and the branding has gone through a steady change. Not unexpected. Yes, Al. Yes, it was renamed Motorplex, and the last event was back in 2015. The belief though is it's gone. How much do you know about the season finale track? Because I really don't know anything. I'm sure all the other guys do. I've never been there, Jim, but I've caught races there. It's racy. It's very racy. I actually think it's a great fit for the series. I do. Momini has been a part, if I'm not mistaken, of racing in Canada for a long time. Obviously, the ACT series goes there on the regular. So it is a place that many people know of. It doesn't have the history with this series as Delaware does, but I'm open to the change. I'm open to it. I know the team behind that track they've been putting in some work. You don't keep trying and trying and trying to get a track unless you really, or to get NASCAR, unless you really want them. It was evident. We lost Saint Eustache. And while Chaudière has come in and been very good as an oval track, you can't have one oval race in Quebec. Now, the arguments go the other way that you're only getting one oval race in Ontario. People need to understand that I think they're going to count Ohsweken Speedway as another oval race. So you got 2 in Quebec, 2 in Ontario. You got 2 road courses. We got 1 road course in Ontario, 2 races there, and 2 in Quebec. 4 and 4. We split it down the middle. Now, of course, you add in Toronto. If Toronto comes back next year, which I do think it will, maybe that replaces Ohsweken Speedway. Maybe it replaces somewhere else. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they add. Maybe they make it 14 races next year. Maybe they take it down to 1 race at Riverside. We don't really know. Once a racetrack closes, very, very few reopen and succeeded is what I've seen over the years. And it's going to get worse, Jim. Unfortunately. I mean, a lot of these tracks in Ontario are on borrowed time. CTMP is really the only one that is lucky because it is considered, I believe it's actually been passed as a historical site, so it cannot be demolished. Gord, I can't believe they cut out Sunset. Okay, so, Gord, we need to rephrase that. Okay? Because you're saying they cut out Sunset. We don't know. We weren't there in that conversation. It just comes out that way. But remember, Sunset could make that decision themselves. Right, FIA rated track 2, says Tim. So it costs a lot of money to get NASCAR to come to races. If Sunset wanted to, they could pull the plug. I think people are overestimating as well how much tracks get when NASCAR comes to town. It is not what you would think. So let's go through and see the other big change that took place. There it is. Beautiful. I'll tell you why I like it. I'll tell you why. Not just because it matches the hat that I'm wearing. Yeah, we kind of thought of it first, NASCAR. Thank you. But I will say that you say the NASCAR Pinty Series and people go, what the heck is Pinty's? You say NASCAR Canada Series. It's self-explanatory. It's a NASCAR series in Canada. Quick and to the point. Love it. So the NASCAR Canada Series, new logo, fresh logo. To me, this is beneficial to partnerships. Not just the fact that it's getting rid of the NASCAR Pinty's in the name. And I'm not suggesting that I don't want Pinty's to be part of the name. I like that. I love them. They're great. But in terms of partnerships, all of a sudden now there's no conflict in the name. What if you don't have a contract, you don't have any affiliation with Pinty's, you don't want to be associated with Pinty's, it's got nothing to do with your brand. But now all of a sudden it's the NASCAR Canada Series. Well, we're in Canada. What is it that people remember about NASCAR? It was the Canadian NASCAR. That's how I got introduced to it. We don't have NASCAR up here. We have NASCAR. In a way, it's almost a throwback to it. Because essentially it's taking NASCAR's name and putting the Canada back in it. We were the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series, the NASCAR Pinty Series, and now it's much easier, I think, for Dale Jr. to say the NASCAR Canada Series than NASCAR Pinty Series. I think partners will look at this and go, and it's a little bit easier because, again, you approach them with a NASCAR Canada Series, and Canadian businesses, hopefully some Canadian corporations, look at this and go, oh, cool. There's a NASCAR Canada Series. I never knew that. I would think so. I would think that that's what's we're gonna see. You're gonna have people that are gonna go, oh, I never knew there was a NASCAR Canada Series. Oh, actually, Tim, you're very right. Canada, yeah. They'll mess it somehow, right? Eviram comes on board and joins Pinty's to co-present the series. There's some relief here. With Pinty's not being in the best financial situation, Eviram's coming in probably to help them. Also adding to the series itself. Eviram came on in a big way last year. They presented race events. They presented Thomas Neveu and also helped out with Alex Gannett. Now, what I do not want to see here is a repeat of what we've seen from many other partnerships that have come into this series, which is come in, stay for a cup of coffee, spend all your money, and then you're gone. Do it slow. Coming in and being a partner for the series, I just want you to partner with the series. You don't need to be on the car, on multiple cars, on the series, doing multiple races. We saw that with Canadian Tire. We saw it with Quick Wick. Got to do it slow. Baby, slow, slow, slow. Because we want people to stick around. Oh, look, a Quebec-based sponsor in Eviram. Great to see. There you go. Actually, both of them, technically, Tim. Aviram and Pinty's, because Pinty's is part of Olimel, which is, guess what? From Quebec. Why oh why would we have our series finale in Quebec? Seems pretty simple, doesn't it? Now, there was a press release put out by NASCAR, and we're going to take a quick look at it. Take a quick look at what they had to say about this partnership. So beginning in 2024, NASCAR's Canadian Series will be known as the NASCAR Canada Series, with Aviram and Pinty's serving as presenting partners. The series, currently the NASCAR Pinty Series, is entering its 18th season as the top national motorsport series, is what it should say, in Canada. NASCAR officials also unveiled the 2024 schedule for the NASCAR Canada Series, which features 13 races across 6 provinces. Canadian motorsports fans are incredibly passionate, and the new NASCAR Canada Series name appropriately captures their nationalistic pride, said Chad Siegler, NASCAR Chief International Officer. The series features Canada's biggest racing stars competing at the top tracks across the country, with an influx of talented young drivers and a garage full of healthy and competitive teams. Interest in the series is at an all-time high. We are excited to build off recent momentum and deliver great racing to fans across Canada. Keyword, across Canada, not in 2 provinces. Pinty's, which has served as entitlement partner since 2016, and Aviram are presenting partners of the series, with each investing across the industry, including teams, tracks, and fans promotions. And from that terminology makes me think that they are still going to be assisting. Aviram isn't part of a team as such. They were promoting and partnering with Thomas Neva and Alex Gannett, so that might be there might be something there when it says investing in a team. Aviram is excited to join NASCAR Canada as one of the presenting partners, and as its official residual materials management and environmental solutions provider, says Julien Remillard, Aviram president. Our involvement in this thrilling series dates back to last season, where we offered support to some drivers, race promoters, and racetrack operators. When the opportunity to become series partner presented itself, it was a natural progression in alignment with our expanding presence across Canada and the United States. We eagerly anticipate sharing our expertise with NASCAR Canada and its stakeholders to bolster their recycling and sustainability efforts. Why is this a great move? Well, what's the one thing that people would say about car racing is the pollution. Well, having somebody that can come in and help us with any sort of sustainability bonus. If it's something to do at the track, something to do with the teams, with the materials that they're using, beneficial. Once again, we are proud to associate the name of Pinty's brand with NASCAR Canada as presenting partner, thus supporting motorsport in Canada, which we now have a new race in Quebec, said Yannick Gervais, Olimel president and CEO. Talk more about the schedule. But then we get to NASCAR also announced longtime Canadian motorsports executive Alain Labrosse has been named general manager of NASCAR Canada. Labrosse, a member of the Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame, will be charged with growing and promoting NASCAR throughout Canada and includes oversight of the NASCAR Canada Series. Following a successful career as a driver, Labrosse transitioned to the business side of the sport. He owned and operated Autodrome Saint-Eustache for 13 years and has served as promoter, team owner, and agent for some of the biggest names in Canadian motorsport: Andrew Ranger, Alex Tagliani, and Patrick Carpentier. It seems as if this Alex Tagliani guy is pretty good. This Andrew Ranger might be a 3-time champion. Patrick Carpentier, been known all across Motorsports, they don't hire a fool. NASCAR didn't hire a fool here. They hired a Canadian Motorsport Hall of Famer. Alain Labrosse offers a lot. Not only responsible for being able to bring in Walmart Canada to the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series at the time as a partner for Andrew Ranger and Alex Tagliani. But Alain Labrosse helped support and run one of the most beloved tracks that we had on our schedule, one that predates the NASCAR purchase as part of CASCAR. Autodrome Saint Eustache was a track that CASCAR visited multiple times. Alain Labrosse brings legitimacy to this position, and he brings a proven track record. Now, we know Tony Spiteri is not going anywhere. He's not involved with the NASCAR side of things anymore, but Freshstone brand still presenting the Freshstone 100, the dirt classic at Ohsweken Speedway. Whether or not we see him at the racetrack, I'm sure we will. But Alain Labrosse gives new hope to this series, and it's his job to ensure that everybody, fans, the teams, the tracks, the drivers, the officials, all reap the rewards. No dividing between provinces here. If that's the way that you feel, I'm sorry. It's time for the NASCAR Canada Series on TSN and Flow Racing. 2024 season is here, friends. Let's get ready to go. Have yourselves a great week. Got to cut it short tonight. Got another interview to do. Snickers and Scuffs, of course, check us out. Make sure you're back for G-Force TV for episode 201 with our good friends Adam Ross and Clinton Jeffrey. I'm sure they'll talk more about this in the coming days. And we're going to hopefully have some guests on this show ourselves. Trying to talk with people across the racing community that definitely have opinions on the schedule, definitely have opinions about the series, where the series is going. Maybe we'll talk with some drivers, some officials. Don't know. But thank you for tuning in. If you can, give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to G-Force TV. Get all that amazing action. We head to Ohsweken Speedway every Friday night on G-Force TV. Of course, APC United Late Models. Hopefully they'll be signed up for 2024. But we will catch you then. Have a great week. Cam K signing off.